Well, good evening, everybody. It's meteorologist Joe Chaffee, and what you're looking at is the Armory Cam in Syracuse, New York, at Armory Square, and you can find this on their website, armorycam.com, and you can see there it is a winter wonderland, quite unlike what much of my area has experienced this winter, and much to the snow lovers' chagrin. But at least if we can't have the snow here, we can bring it to you this way. So that, again, thank you very much to the folks at armorycam.com for this shot and for us to be using it here tonight from Syracuse, New York, where the temperature is a very crisp 12 degrees, believe it or not. So I hope everybody's having a great evening out there. A little bit of a later start than usual. We usually start at 7, but I kind of pushed it back a bit to 7:30. And we're going to take a look at a rather chaotic weather pattern that exists across much of the United States. We've got so many weather systems running around. Each one, especially in the east, we've got 4 of them in play, really. Each one is having an impact on the other. Not all of them are going to have impacts to the northeast weather directly. 3 of them will to some degree. Of course, we have one tonight. We may have one, Thursday night into Friday morning, and we may have a third on Saturday morning. And then, of course, all of this is really just the what would we call it? The first act, because models are starting to now at least come together on the idea of something more impressive for later Sunday into Monday of next week. And we're going to go through some pretty interesting developments on the models today with regards to all of this. But first things first, we're going to take care of current weather conditions. Welcome aboard to those of you, by the way, who are watching from my Facebook page, Meteorologist Joe Chaffee, from Angry Ben's Facebook page, Angry Ben's Angry Weather, from New York, New Jersey, Connecticut Storm Watch, from SS Storm Chase and Forecast Team in South Central Pennsylvania, North Central Maryland, and nearby. And, of course, those of you who are watching tonight from my weather app, you got the notification that the live stream was on, and we're going to get things going. So first off, we have a weak weather system number 1, and that's what's impacting the Northeast today. I'm forecasting basically for an extremely frustrated area and a difficult area to forecast, because I'm literally right on the southern edge of all of this. Okay, so it's a matter of whether the radar echoes can extend far enough south so that we can get a few hours of snow and put down a coating to an inch. I can't remember the last time I've put so much mental effort in trying to figure out whether we're going to get a coating to an inch of snow or not than I have in this particular season, but especially in the last month or so. You have to work just as hard for a storm that is going to produce large amounts as you do for small amounts. For snow lovers, I understand you'd rather have the larger amounts. But these coating to an inch deals are such a pain, because if you don't get it, then you kind of like, so what? It was just going to be a coating to an inch anyway. There really isn't much room for a lot of upside. So we have a smattering of winter weather advisories across upstate New York and parts of southern New England up through the state of Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island. And then they just shut off. In the Hudson Valley, you have to go to Dutchess and Ulster counties northward, Sullivan County north and west up into the Catskills. Otherwise, there really isn't very much to deal with here. We have a small area of winter weather advisories in eastern Oklahoma, southern Missouri, and northwestern Arkansas. This is one of the systems, the next system that's going to probably try to come up for Thursday night into Friday morning. Buried in all of this is an offshore low of North Carolina and some precip that's moving across the state of Florida that really isn't producing any huge problems. Out in the west, still a little bit on the busy side with winter storm warnings up for the Sierra Nevadas, and then on northward through parts of Oregon and Washington. We've got weather advisories otherwise, and some avalanche alerts that are up in western Wyoming and parts of Montana and also some various flood advisories that continue in parts of California where the rain has been pretty much unrelenting. Now, we always like to look at that SPC 7-day precip map, because that can often at least be a clue. These guys are pretty good at what they do, so they have an unbiased head on their shoulders. And if you notice how the precip is lined up here for the next 7 days, so this would include any event that happens early next week. The precip amounts, the dark blue starts the ½ inch of liquid. So if you notice, they have the precip lined up in a way that would indicate that the systems are going to try to be more focused toward coastal areas rather than inland areas. And this is important. At WPC may be giving a clue here that they're thinking that with these lows behaving the way they are, but particularly the one for Sunday night and Monday, that maybe, just maybe this time, we're not going to see something that cuts out to the west. No guarantees, by the way, just because they're doing this means that they're going to be right, but in the past they have a fairly good track record. We've got a lot of precip being indicated across the Gulf states, so this is part of that Sunday-Monday system that we're dealing with, and a little bit is the system for Thursday into Thursday night that's going to turn up northward, and then there's another one that's going to gel up some moisture for, for Friday night and Saturday morning, also a minor one. But the bottom line is that WPC seems to be hinting at the idea of maybe more of a flatter look here in the eastern states in terms of the flow. And out in the west, of course, even though there's going to be a bit of a lull, a short lull in what's going on in the west, there's more coming. So we've got big liquid rain amounts being indicated for the Sierra Nevadas, and of course that's all going to be snow. When you're talking snows probably in many feet up through the Sierra Nevadas in California, and to the coastal areas and the lower elevations, we're talking quite a bit of rain on the order of several inches or more. The amounts tail off a bit as you head up into Washington and Oregon, but still quite a bit of activity going on throughout much of the northern Rockies, and then back through Utah and Nevada. As far as liquid precip is concerned, anywhere from an inch to an inch and a quarter, an inch and a half. So on to what is happening with all the satellites and radars and everything else. So we'll show you the chaotic nature and how it looks on the satellite radar. We'll start with the the continental United States, and there were several short waves here in play. You have two of them actually in play now in the east, where you have a system that is moving off the Florida coast and a low that is up off the North Carolina coast. Weak, but they are obvious. You can see the cloud structure there running to the northeast, and then you have the northern stream energy that is bringing snows to upstate New York at the moment and into parts of New England. You're seeing clouds back through the western Gulf states, and of course that's another short wave that's in play there. And you're seeing the feed of moisture coming in from the tropical Pacific across Mexico and into Texas. Now, these are not strong feeds of moisture that we're dealing with. These are all relatively weak shortwave troughs that we're watching. The problem is that there are too many of them, and that just wreaks chaos on models. It's hard to figure out what's real and what's not real. Even in the short range models, you find yourself, as I was talking to Bill Goodman about this afternoon, we should be at a point where we shouldn't have to be second guessing ourselves against these short-term models that have such a wide variation. And even though we might be talking about a small area of geography, if one model is showing precip and the other one isn't, you suddenly find yourself saying, well, I thought this was going to happen, and now I'm wondering, maybe the model that does have the precip is right if I wasn't putting it in, or just the opposite. Meanwhile, out in the west, on the Pacific satellite loop here, if you recall over the last couple of days, we have seen this almost continuous feed of moisture coming in from the tropical Pacific, running northeastward toward California. Well, there's a break now in that feed. The upper low that was off the California coast has pushed inland or close to moving inland. And of course, now we're getting this break in the feed here, and there's your low. But if you look down at the lower center of the picture, you start to see more moisture being drawn northeastward. On the lower left are the Hawaiian Islands. To the north of there, we have a storm system sitting out there, a deep trough and upper low that is sitting north of the Hawaiian Islands. So that is the new mechanism that is pulling this next round of tropical moisture northeastward, and that is part of that precip surge that you saw indicated on the Weather Prediction Center's forecast map. Now here are the radars tonight. Let's give this a quick refresh. And the snow area in the northeast, I noticed today, at least from the standpoint of the dry air that was over me, somehow I did actually manage to get some snow showers, and I actually drove in a pretty decent patch of snow where the visibility got down under a mile, however brief. Wasn't even enough to whiten the ground, but I was actually a little bit surprised that we were able to see snow actually reaching the ground in spite of the fact that the air was so bone dry. And that perhaps means that where you're seeing these lighter blue shades, which oftentimes just indicates maybe snow that's not reaching the ground. The observations are saying otherwise. And one of the things I'm noticing tonight in northwest Pennsylvania, and now moving into north central Pennsylvania, this area that is running north of Route 80 is holding together, and it is further south than what's being indicated on the HRRR. So I kind of went and looked at the short-range models, and I tried to find the one that I thought best fit what's happening as far as precip is concerned tonight, and I kind of settled on the RGEM. The RGEM has, quote unquote, the most bullish look for my area, eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England. If you're in south central Pennsylvania, if you're watching from SS Storm Chase, north central Maryland, and of course down in Virginia, central and south Jersey, southeastern PA, there's nothing here for you. And this system is going to go by to your north with no consequence. Meanwhile, there's a little coastal low off North Carolina, and that's you're seeing some of these showers that are popping up on the edge of the radar views here. Further south, there's a bit more of a obvious shortwave trough moving off the Florida coast. Now there's going to be another low that's going to form from this and pretty much move straight to the east, but it's not going to have any direct impact on the weather in my neck of the woods. Back through Louisiana and Mississippi and East Texas, beginning to see the generation of some showers and a few heavier downpours. So this is the beginnings of a weather system that'll be heading up to the mid-Atlantic states and maybe to about New York City and southernmost New England for late Thursday night into Friday morning for a handful of hours. A little bit of precip in the southwest back through Texas, and then we head out to the west coast where some activity going on in California, but it's a lot calmer than what it was yesterday when it was loaded with rain and snow from San Francisco northward. And we've got some patchy precip up in the northwest, in the southern parts of Idaho, and across, still getting some streaky snows across Montana and through parts of Wyoming and into South Dakota and western Nebraska, northwestern Colorado. The surface map tonight with regards to temperatures, just want to show with my area, we've got some fairly cold air that's wedged in from New England down to about central New Jersey. So we've got 20s, and we're talking low and mid 20s. As you go south and west, there's actually more west than south. Your temperatures are skewing higher. The further east you go toward the coastal locations, your temperatures are skewing lower. So I have warmer temperatures closer to New York City as opposed to eastern Long Island because of the air coming down from New England. It's low 20s, low and mid 20s over much of Long Island. It's upper 20s and low 30s across New Jersey. Low and middle 30s in much of southeastern and south central PA, and down into north central Maryland, you start to get into some upper 30s to even a few lower 40s. But head up to the north where the bulk of this action is happening, and you've got readings in the teens. As I said, Syracuse is at 12, Rochester's at 16, Buffalo's 16, and then you start to get to single digits as you move up into the Adirondacks, down to 9 at Plattsburgh. In Franklin County, I'm not sure exactly what this odd spot is. Saranac Lake is 3 above, and Glens Falls is at 9. We've got Watertown at about 9, Fort Drum, Watertown at about 9 above, and Jefferson is at 10. So this is pretty cold air that's up to the north that's wedged in. The thermal boundary here that has set up, that is cutting off the snow, is, if it were 50 miles further south, it would probably have made a huge difference in terms of the overall outcome. And when we look down to the south this evening, we're seeing temperatures that are basically in the 40s and 50s. You start to get to 60s when you get down into Georgia, and of course, you move down south into Florida. You're seeing a lot of spots are generally in the upper 60s and low 70s. 60s and low 70s across the Gulf states. So on the surface map tonight, as it pops up whenever it decides to, are we going to pop up for us? Thank you so much. So here's your complex here in the east. It's a chaotic mess where you've got a surface low, a weak low running into northwest Pennsylvania. So you can see there's a bit of a warm front there that's pushing up northeastward. 60s at 4 o'clock this afternoon across West Virginia and southeast Ohio and into Kentucky. So there's a warm push up there. You've got a high that is sitting just north of Plattsburgh, and a little bit of a wedge there that's down into the Carolina mountains. Sort of the look of cold air damming, but this is a weak scenario. It's not like you're dealing with some kind of major storm here. You're dealing with weak systems, and here's your low off the North Carolina, Virginia coast, which is, here's system 1. You got system 2 in this shot. You go down off Florida, you get the stationary boundary with a low off the Florida coast, another one analyzed east of New Orleans, and then you have another low that is running in northwestern Arkansas. So this is that other system that is going to be moving in. And of course, you snake that up the Rockies and then kind of go take a left turn and head toward southern southern Idaho and Oregon, and then you snake a cold front down through California and offshore. Again, the pause that refreshes there. Still cold across Washington and northern Oregon, getting some of that cold high just sort of hanging back into the northwest, and that continues to keep things on the cold side there. So let's go short range first. And as I said, we're going to look at the RGEM with the system in the eastern part of the United States for tonight. And this is from earlier today. So if we match it up to the radar at 1Z, which will be 8 o'clock tonight. Remember, it's a 5-hour time difference between here and Greenwich Mean Time. And a 4-hour time difference. And when we go to daylight saving time in a couple of weeks, which I'm not a fan of, and I've said that many times, we are going to be at wait, do I have it backwards here? I'm sorry. So noon, it's 5 hours now. I have it backwards. I'm having a senior moment. Okay, so it's 5 hours, the difference now. So at 7 o'clock in the evening, it is midnight at Greenwich time. When we go to daylight saving time, it's 4 hours. Okay? Oh, God. It's been a long day, and I do a lot. Between posts and live streams and everything else, they all sometimes kind of start lopping together. All right, so here's the way the RGEM sees it, and no view here is perfect with regards to a matchup to the radar view. I'll bring the east radar view up again so you can take a look. My My interest is that area up in northern PA, northern Pennsylvania. It's really, when you think about it, I'm worried about a coating to an inch here. This is what it's become. But anyhow, so the RGM kind of extends that precip and holds it pretty firm. So it brings the southern edge a bit further south than the other models, down to about almost to the Jersey Turnpike, and then it just falls apart after that. And I'm kind of interested because I'd like to at least wake up tomorrow morning to a coating to an inch over Long Island. So that's what I'm hoping for. A bit more robust in the darker blues in upstate New York and through New England, where several inches or more will accumulate out of this, and then of course this goes out. Now I'm going to widen out because we're going to bring up this next mess. We'll get the wider shot here on the geography, assuming that the internet didn't just freeze on me. Oh, thank you. You know what? Let me get rid of a few things so we're not taxing it too much. We'll get rid of that, and we'll get rid of that, get rid of this. And okay, so once this system goes out tomorrow, it's going to take two short waves out with it, so be gone. Now we've got this other system now moving across the Gulf with some rain through Alabama and into Georgia. You can see an area of snow in southern Illinois and Indiana. I have been really struggling today with this particular system because of the fact that the global models really don't seem to be doing much with it, if anything at all, whereas the short-range models are a bit more robust. I'm kind of leaning in that direction since the global models, the GFS, the European, haven't been exactly hitting home runs with these sorts of things lately. So I keep looking for additional confirmation as we go by through every model run. We'll see if we get it when the next model sequence begins. But this feature holds together fairly well tomorrow night into early Friday morning, and it does show an area of fairly decent snow, at least a few inches for northern Virginia through much of Maryland, southern Pennsylvania, and then as we approach daybreak, the area begins to fall apart. It makes it to about New York City, and then it just falls apart there as we go through the morning hours. That's only about 5 or 6 hours between the time it reaches its peak intensity at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and then it just weakens considerably. It just shows you how unimpressive the upper air is at the moment with these short waves. They're the flow is very, very flat. They're minimal disturbances that go by. They flare up slightly, and then they weaken after that. So I covered for the possibility here that we could wind up with a coating to perhaps a few inches from northeastern Virginia up to about New York City and Long Island and southernmost New England. The coating to maybe just a coating up on the northern edge of that, and perhaps for areas in central and South Jersey and southeastern Pennsylvania, an inch or so. When you start getting into south central Pennsylvania, north central Maryland, down into northeast Virginia, there it might be 1, 2, or 3 inches, depending on whether the models are doing a good job trying to develop this precip or not. The tough part of this is the way it matches up with the upper air. And here, in fact, when you look at the RGEM, I mean, you can see these little jet streaks here that are moving through. Here's the one for tonight that's running across the Great Lakes. So there's your shortwave trough. You'll notice in the flow there, it's kind of this sort of gentle northwest to westerly flow. It's not like you're seeing some kind of V-shaped trough. There's a big difference between this, for example. This was the Great Lakes storm, this well-defined upper low, and when you look at it from the standpoint of Monday morning, you had this really strong V-shaped, negatively tilted shortwave trough running from near James Bay southeast toward Maine. So it was there we had that, a secondary development with that major storm. There's a huge difference between that look and this look that we're seeing tonight. There's your short wave. It actually doesn't look half bad here. This was back yesterday. But you see how flat it is as it goes by. You don't have any kind of sharp V shape here at all. And then you look down to the south where you've got, you know, a little bit of a shortwave trough off the Florida coast, and then back in the as you look toward the Gulf states, you've got some energy there coming out, and that's our system for Thursday night into Friday. So the bottom line is that these weak systems are going to be just that. They're going to be weak, and the important thing about them is, here we are on Friday, by the way, because we have another system that's setting up here for Friday night and for Saturday. The other thing is that we are these systems are going to have impact in terms of everything else that's going on. Here's the RGEM for Friday night. There's your next system after Thursday night, Friday morning. Here comes the next week system for Friday night, for late Friday night, Saturday morning. Probably some kind of low developing just offshore, nothing major. And you also see some snow up there, up in moving into the western lakes. That is a shortwave trough. That's the leading edge of colder air coming down from Canada. That is going to be part of the equation with regards to the system for Sunday night into Monday. So I'm going to switch to the NAM, and we'll move forward with the NAM model. So there's another weak system there for early Saturday morning. A little rain and snow from that. The area of snow that moves across the lakes and into southern Canada, this was something that some of the models, particularly the GFS, if you remember, was making a rather deep low with this. And the European in particular was saying no, this was going to be a much weaker feature further north. It was not going to do any kind of a phase. It was just going to stay separate, and that's pretty much how it's winding up now. Notice the low that develops offshore that runs to the northeast. That's actually having some impact in the overall upper air, the overall profile of the atmosphere in the eastern United States. And then toward the end of the period of this NAM run, which is 1 a.m. Sunday, you start to see quite a bit of snow over northern Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa, back through southern South Dakota. So this is going to be the system that is going to be setting up for Sunday into Monday. So now let's take you through what the dilemma is. I put a link up in the chat earlier, a primer article that would prep you up for this. And this is the Europeans' idea for Sunday with regards to how it sees the upper air. And the models actually are all very close in terms of, if you were to look at the upper airs of all the models for this time frame, we're not seeing what we were seeing days ago, where one model had a ridge, where the other model had a trough. Now they're all kind of lined up, and if you were to look at them at first glance, you would say, okay, they actually look, very, very similar, almost identical, but there are some important differences. The European is suggesting is you're going to have a bit of ridging along the east coast, and you need a little bit of ridging in order to bring a system up from the south, okay? You've got this broad-looking trough, but there are two short waves that have some definition to them. What the European is suggesting is that there's a race between the arrival of cold air that's going to be sweeping down out of Canada and then pushing eastward across the Great Lakes into eastern Canada with a big high. It's a race between that and the low that is going to form on a cold front that moves through here late Saturday night, early Sunday morning. Most times in situations like this, when it's a race between the cold air and the storm usually wins. In other words, the storm goes by first before the cold air can get in, and you wind up with mostly rain for areas that are along and south and east of the surface low track, which is what I've plotted here. This is how the European tracks the surface low just inland. North and west of those, the orange arrows, is where you would wind up seeing snow, and as you get further north, you would see heavier snow. The GFS, on the other hand, has a The look is similar. See, if I go from this to this, it's a similar look, but there are important differences. If you notice how the European has the upper low near James Bay, pulled out more toward the northeast, where the GFS has this sort of flat egg-shaped look, and it's stretched out more east-west along the Canadian border. So what the GFS is suggesting is that the cold air spreads out further east, and it gets there in time so that when you get this wave that develops, the wave winds up tracking south and east in a flatter way. The shortwave troughs are there, but if you look back at the Europeans got them. They're much more defined. The GFS has a flatter look. Here's the European. Here's the GFS. So the track on the GFS, it's not that far from the European. It's just shifted southeast. So you have a low in central Mississippi that goes to north-central North Carolina and then runs east-northeast to just south of the 4070 benchmark, if you want to call it. To me, this is a setup that would suggest, if it winds up working, this would be, you're asking 5 days ahead of time. So I'd say this would be like a 3 to 6, 4 to 8 inch snowfall for the cities from Washington to Philadelphia to New York City to Boston, if the GFS were to verify. But here's the thing, and there are arguments. I think you can make arguments in both directions. In favor of the European, which I'll show you here, I'll bring it up this way, and we'll take a wider view. The thing about the European is, and considering the way the winter season has played out, you have to ask yourself, almost every storm that has been like this has cut to the west. Why is this one going to be different? The rhyming part of it would be that the system would cut to the west. It's a little different this time around because in the two systems that we've had in the month of February, we had a high build in first, and then you had a cold air with snow that came in, and then we went over to ice and then to rain. This, I think, is a little bit different. You could argue that the fact that it is a different upper air that we're dealing with to some degree might lead to a more of a different outcome. The European is also, as we've seen, has led us down many snowstorm trips this year. None of them have happened. So maybe the one time that it's not showing it is the one time it does happen for the coastal cities anyway. The European would be a substantial snowfall for central and western Pennsylvania, much of upstate New York, and interior New England. But as far as the coastal cities are concerned, the GFS is the GFS, the Icon model, and a bunch of others are going in that direction. So the European has been guilty of over-amplifying a lot of this stuff. You have to ask yourself, maybe this time around, that is going to be the case again. The other thing I want to point out, too, as far as the longer range is concerned, we've been talking about this period that we're going into now, where the main pattern of the strong Pacific jet seems to be taking a break. Okay? With that said, I've been arguing that we'll probably have a 10-day to 2-week window where something could happen, and if it doesn't happen in that window, then we're going to be done because the Pacific jet will come roaring back. So you'll notice on the Europeans' run, at least through the 9 and 10-day period, that you do hold on to it, and then toward the end, the European starts to pull it out to some degree. Not completely, but pull it out to some degree, the trough of the east. And you're starting to see the Pacific, getting that look again toward the end of the period. The GFS, by the way, does this also, but it takes longer to get there. The GFS today, we'll run the GFS's upper air. And, here's your trough in the east. Again, it's a much flatter, broader looking trough for Sunday night and Monday. And then you have, the trough, another one that follows toward the latter part of next week. So you wonder whether there might be time for another event to happen in this 10-day window. And it still holds on to that trough until late in the long range. It pushes it back to around the 11th or 12th, and then you finally get to this more zonal look, this Pacific look, that Pacific jet really getting getting more active there. Not quite all the way across, but almost. You still have have a trough off the west coast. The Canadian connection is not really all that impressive at all here by the time you get toward the end of the period of the GFS. So we'll see. That's a long ways away with respect to the next event. So let's back up. Let's pull up the surface map, and we'll take you through how the GFS sees all this. So actually, the very first map is from for Monday morning when the low is passing southeast of the benchmark. So here we go. Running it back. Let's start with tonight. That moves out. You see that low off the Florida coast and the one off the Carolina coast. So they go out with it. Say goodbye. Here comes the next one for late Thursday night, Friday morning. GFS is much weaker, and it weakens the system as it moves offshore. Kind of hangs around a bit off the coast because there's no real push yet. And now you got this cold front coming. So Saturday morning, there's a little bit of precip there. Some light rain or light snow. Light rain near the coast, maybe a little light snow inland. But again, minor. But you've got a cold front coming, high building in. And now we've got, by the way, another big storm coming in to California from the southwest with more heavy rains and heavy snows. That energy is the energy that's coming eastward for Sunday. And here's how the GFS handles it. Cold air starts to spread out from that big high in Montana. Part of that ridge drive goes down into Texas. Part of the high builds eastward across the Great Lakes and extends just enough into upstate New York and New England. So you get this flattish looking wave that comes across Mississippi and Alabama, moves off the Virginia coast, and then south of the benchmark. I'm not forecasting this, by the way, just illustrating what the model is doing. And with regards to that upper air that we looked at, in the meantime, if we look at the Europeans and we only have this in 24-hour increments, so we're at a little bit of a disadvantage here, but we'll switch to the European. And the European, there's your low in northern Arkansas Sunday morning. It's sitting near Portland, Maine, Monday morning. So if you draw a line, when you draw a line from there, you actually take a surface low from Arkansas to northern West Virginia, and then just north and west of, maybe right over northwest New Jersey, or just north and west of New York City to just north and west of Boston. We had something like this happen back a few weeks ago. So from that standpoint, it kind of rhymes with it. I will say that at least from the standpoint of the last run from overnight, this track is actually a little bit further to the east, so maybe the European is starting to come into, maybe starting to think that, well, perhaps the flatter look is going to be more correct. The European ensembles today were like the GFS. And the ensembles on the GFS, what I thought was pretty interesting is, and we'll put the plots here on the ensembles. If you take a look here for Sunday night into Monday, so this is Monday morning, every ensemble virtually every ensemble member is offshore. There are a couple of them that are close to the coast, but the vast majority of them are out in the ocean, and the mean position is roughly at 38.5 and about 70.5. When I looked at the prior ensemble run on the GFS, the mean position was at about the same place. So it seems like at least the GFS has kind of put its focus on taking a low offshore, a flatter look to the upper air, and the ensembles of the European have done have a similar idea. They are also the ensembles. If I could show them to you on the EPS, it would look just like the GFS does. Now, long range. We don't do this too often, But Timothy, you asked me, so I will deliver. We'll take a look. Well, let's see what we have of it. We'll see how far back I'm going to have to go. I thought I had a CFS weekly. How many runs back do I have to go for this? I did see something. They're all gone. The monthlies aren't going to do you any good. No, that's no good. I thought I had the weekly. Oh, here we go. All right, so they suddenly found themselves. Oh, that was weird. Okay, so the overall upper air pattern. We've been talking about this. This 10-day to 2-week window. If you look at the climate models and then you look at the short range, this is week. In its long range, this is the CFS, and you can find this on tropicaltidbits.com. So this is the period from March 6th to March 13th. You go from this, what we're in, this was right through March 6th. This is the average pattern, by the way. So it's over a 7-day period. If you've got a strong ridge, really strong ridge at the beginning of the period, you kind of come up with an average for the whole 7 days. It doesn't necessarily reflect what's going on. You could have the first 2 days be, very far above normal. The next bunch of days having below normal temperatures, but not by a huge amount. And it's going to skew like it looks. It's telling you that the 7-day period is going to be warm throughout. That's really not what this is saying here. This is probably front end skewed, but we have a cold look or a coldish look at least through about the 13th of March. But then after that, you start to see the heights coming up in the east. So you get more of a ridge position building here through the long range through the end of the month. So the climate models support the notion that we're going to see a ridge come back in the eastern part of the United States, and the ensembles, by the way, also. If you take a look at what the ensembles did here in its long-range period, deep, relatively deep trough here, front end loaded, but then right after about day 11, day 12, that trough pulls out, and you start to get ridging here in the eastern part of the United States. That I think goes along with the idea that sometime after the, if you want to believe the European, it comes as soon as the 11th or 12th. If you believe the GFS, it might take an extra day or two. But at the end of the day, all the models get to about the same place. And with respect to moisture, let's see what I can get here in terms of the moisture idea. It's 7-day total precip. I don't know how helpful it is, but I mean it does look to be, just running it back. It's kind of dry throughout much of the Northeast, which would make sense because when you figure, after whatever happens Sunday into Monday, if we're going to be in this cold pattern with all this cold Canadian air, you're going to have a lot less moisture to play with. So it does have it mostly dry across the Northeast and Great Lakes, or drier than normal. Doesn't mean it can't snow. And then as we get into that warmer pattern toward mid-month, you start to see the precip coming back. So something to consider, that when that Pacific jet comes back, we will get warmer than average, but we're going to wind up also getting wetter than average toward the second half of the month. All right, so we covered a lot of stuff tonight, I think. And let's get this guy up here. I moved the box around just to give everybody a slightly different look. So onto the chat board we go, and as always, nice to see everybody here on board. A lot of the usual folks here on a night-to-night basis. If you're in upstate New York, you're getting at least a little bit of snow. Ruin Nation, up until this past Monday, forecast was mid-40s to low 50s, Friday and Saturday into next week, and now temps are in the 30s and low 40s. All these lows running around, all these short waves, keeping things a bit colder, although the cold air that's up in the northeast right now, that's gonna disappear to some degree, but we're not going to really be able to warm up very much, and then we're going to get that next push from Canada, and that of course is key with regards to the system for Sunday. You got to get that cold air to get in here before the wave develops and comes out. That is a battle that happens a lot. And most times the storm, as I said earlier, winds up coming out first. You get mostly rain. Maybe if you're lucky, it changes to snow briefly at the end, and then the cold air comes in and everything just shuts off. But sometimes it does happen where you get the cold air in first and you get the wave second, and maybe this will be one of those times. Perhaps the fact that we haven't had anything happen all winter, and this is the one last gasp, that for this short period of time, the pattern is going to line up in a way that will favor a snowfall here of, as I said, if you had to ask me to say an early guess, it'd be a 3. It looks to me, it kind of looks like it would be a 3 to 6, 4 to 8 event for the coastal areas if it winds up being like the GFS and the Icon model. All the models have had a very tough time, Steve LaPointe. I agree. The NAM is not, has been problematic, and so has the HRRR. The HRRR has, sometimes you look at it and it looks like it's working, and then all of a sudden it just stops working again. The Icon, actually, I've been watching it the last number of days. It's actually held up pretty well, I even give the Canadian model a bit of credit here. We should mention, by the way, I don't know if I said it before, but the UCMET supports what the GFS did. And in fact, I'll have to do this off camera. I can't put it on the screen, but at least I might have enough of the the 18Z run, which is not publicly available, but I can talk about it, even if I can't show it. But I'll bring it up off camera. Let me just take a look real quick to see what that has done, or what is doing. At least maybe we can garnish a clue on how the next run is going to handle all this. Okay, let's see. How much of it do we have? All right, we're out to 90 hours. And all right, so so it looks like, all right, I just want to compare it back. I mean, I'm eyeballing this. Eyeballing this, it looks like it has a flatter look to it. When you're going to take a storm up the west side of the Appalachians, the isobars are pointing toward northeast Ohio and northwestern Pennsylvania, western New York. They're not doing that. They're pointing more toward Tennessee and eastern Kentucky and in that direction. So from that standpoint, it looks flatter. I want to just look at the old run here from earlier, and let's take that out. Okay, so this will be the old 96. It does have the 18Z does have a bit of a flatter look to it, in my opinion, with regards to the prior 12Z run. So perhaps the European is signaling that it wants to go in that direction. On the old run, by the way, because I can see the in-betweens, the low goes from eastern Kentucky, northern into West Virginia, and the low center is actually sitting halfway on Route 195 between Trenton and the coast. You've got southerly isobars from New York City east to southern New England, and then the low from there jumps up into the Gulf of Maine. So it's a just inland track on the European. Now the only thing I would just point out as a caveat is that what you don't want to see is that you wind up with a trough dropping down into the plains, and it winds up sharpening where you suddenly have a deep low that is going west of the Appalachians and then running up the St. Lawrence Valley. I don't think you're going to see that, but again, looking at the old run, when I look at how the isobars are pointed to in its view, it was pointing it more toward Ohio, toward western Pennsylvania, western New York on the old run, where now it's more pointing it toward Kentucky and southern West Virginia in that direction, and that's what you want to see. And just to get an idea, I just want to look at the profile of so the new 96 was the old 102. Sorry, the new 90 hour. Okay, so it's the old 96, and bear with me. Just looking at the profile, it looks like the new 18Z run is a little bit colder in the eastern part of the United States. So the jury's out, but little things are coming in that I think maybe this will be the one time that snow lovers will win out. We shall see. Still many runs to go. We're only at Wednesday night, and we're talking about 96 hours away. At least we're not 168 hours away. We're inside the 5-day time frame, so we're gaining a bit more confidence as far as how models are handling all of this, and maybe tomorrow and Friday we'll see them all, get pretty much in line. We can only hope, considering how some of these storms have behaved during this winter, which is, the clock is ticking away. Only one day left in the month of February, and then we go into the month of March. I didn't jinx it yet, Peter. I'm trying not to. I don't think the new ensembles are in yet. Let me just double check. Actually, the new ensembles are... The 18Z ensemble is actually also in. And... well, I mean, it's got an offshore track. The mean is probably sitting... the mean position is not that far off from where the GFS has it. It's pretty close. So... maybe we're on to something. We'll see. We'll see if that is the case. Snow lovers, you maybe might get your last opportunity here. All right. So I think that we're gonna call it a night. So let me just do a little bit of quick business. Okay. For those of you who shop on Amazon, okay. Let me just show you that you can do it by using my link to Amazon. It looks like this, and while there are items on there, you don't have to you buy those. If you shop on Amazon, just search from the search bar, get your stuff, and it's an easy, great way to support my channel because it doesn't cost you a dime. You shop, Amazon throws me back a little bit of coin out of their pocket, and I'm happy because I can get a couple of cigars out of the deal. And I appreciate those of you who have done that in the past. Also, for those of you who have a bit of a geeky, weather enthusiast in you, you can join my weather platform on Patreon for just $2 a month. And you get a lot of extra weather, extra live streams just for Patreon members. And you can message me at any time. Extra weather posts that I don't put up on my website or on Facebook or on the other platforms. So you can consider that. I put the link up to the chat if you'd like. And again, those of you who have joined, I know a number of my Patreon folks are on here on a nightly basis, and I just want to say thank you to them. And also, let me just remind everybody, for those of you who haven't done it, there is my weather app, which is absolutely free, particularly if you are in my neck of the woods, the northern half of New Jersey, although you can use it anywhere, but my specific focus in the content that I create for it is for the northern half of New Jersey, New York City, Long Island, Connecticut, southern Connecticut, and the lower Hudson Valley. So that's where my forecast focus is there. I oftentimes write about broader things and covering other areas of the country and how they relate to the weather into the eastern United States, including my look at the long range. So you can download that for free, and that is on Google Play or on the App Store. Patty Durkle, I have to come back to Sachem Library. Thank you. Let them know I've got an open calendar. And by the way, a reminder, because Tuesday, March 12th, Tuesday, March 12th is less than 2 weeks away, and I will be at the Westwood Library in Westwood, New Jersey at 7 o'clock Eastern Time. There's more information on that if you go to the Westwood Library website, so just Google it, or you can go on my Facebook page, and I have a post on there that can take you to the website, and you can let me know if you're interested or if you're coming. It's one of the events that I have scheduled. So that's again on Tuesday, March the 12th at 7 p.m., the Westwood Library in Westwood, New Jersey. And if you're in the New York metro area and you'd like me to come out to your library to give a weather talk, let them know to get in touch with me, or send me a contact via my Facebook page or on Twitter, and I will contact them, and let's see if we can set something up. You never know. It could happen. Okay? And just real fast, just as a reminder with respect to the Amazon, we're a participant in the Amazon Services LLC Associates Program, which is an affiliate advertising program designed to provide a means for us to earn fees by linking to Amazon.com and its affiliated sites. Thank you so much for being here tonight. I really appreciate it. Back tomorrow night, either at 7 or at 7:30. The Joe and Joe Weather Show tonight at 9:25 on my Facebook page, meteorologist Joe Chaffee. Have a great night, everybody.